Live from Lusaka, Zambia, this is Camnet International, and this is Frank On Camnet. Welcome. After 14 years at the helm of the Center for Policy Dialogue, Dr. SIMUTANYI is stepping down as Executive Director. I've known Dr. SIMUTANYI for a very, very long time. What a man he is. I've lots of respect for his knowledge of governance issues and his contribution to good governance growth in this country. He's my guest on Frank On Camnet Live. And as usual, towards the end, I'll give you an opportunity to raise issues in relation to governance. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Frank, and good evening. Thank you for having me on your show. It's the first time to come here, and I think it's a very good opportunity, rare opportunity to actually interact with you and, of course, with the viewers. Yeah.
14 years, when you look back, did you realize that you were going to stay in this job, in this assignment for this long?
No, I didn't. Like most of these things, you know, you have an idea, because we had an idea of establishing a think tank, and we are founders, so we try to put this thing together. Right with it, of course, faced a number of challenges, and usually when you originator of an idea, you don't want to give up, you know, because there's something you want to achieve. But then you reach a stage where you feel, I've been around too long. I've been, you know, I've done everything that needed to be done, and there's time for other people to also, you know, pass on the baton. You know, you come from an organization where, you know, from a sector where there are no elections. You know, you don't have to seek a mandate and so forth. If the shareholders feel you should continue, and of course you are the originator of the idea, the so-called vision carrier, they take it that the organization can collapse without you. But I think you reach a stage where you realize that the energy drive begins to diminish, and you know, I've fought so many battles, and I think I've been to talk about that. So even the fortunes of the organization tends to be tied to an individual. So because you are at the helm, you know, some people feel reluctant to come forward and assist. Then the perception, you know, of the organization is normally measured using the prism of the leader, the one who leads it. So I felt that it's the right time. My age also, you know, I'm 65. Right. I know you celebrated. We're about to celebrate. Yeah,
I'll be 70
soon.
June,
as of course you still have energy, I can see, because you are still at your job.
Right.
Yeah, but for me, I feel this is a time I had always wanted to retire.
Brilliant. When you started 14 years ago, when you took over this important organization, what issues did you want to delve into? What were your concerns?
The concerns were to have an organization that would contribute towards alternative policies. Because I realized that political parties in Zambia don't have ideologies. If they have ideologies at all, they are not different from each other. And there's no proper discussion around policy, policy alternatives. We tend to all agree. That's one. Secondly, we felt there was need to cultivate a culture of critical debate, critical discussion on alternatives. I come from a background where at university we would debate, disagree, without necessarily fighting. But then I realized that since multi-party was introduced, if you hold a different view from those who are in government or the group that is ruling, then you're in opposition. You're in opposition. So it reached a stage where people were afraid to actually speak truth to power. And some of us realized that, no, let's enter that space and begin to provide the kind of critical discourse that is missing. And of course, that was not very well received, as you know, because to be critical, to point out what is going wrong, was not really accepted as a normal way of doing things. You know, we're supposed to be politically correct. But we soldiered on. We did a number of things. We organized policy debates, policy dialogues with different groups. But also we raised voice. We provided voice to the complaints of the people. That things are not all right. And of course, you know, but this 14 years meant, you know, working with different governments. You know, Mwanawasa's time, you had the Rupia Banda, Michael Sata, then of course my brother Edgar Lungu, and now the current regime. So we throughout this we were able to interact with these people, and I brought to the job, you know, some experience, because I was once involved in politics myself. In 1991 we formed a political party called Social Democratic Party with Owens Chone and others. And in 1998, Anusu Mazoka invited me to join UPND and to be his first national administrative secretary. So I served in that position for 3 years. So I was at the heart of party politics. And when I left that job, that role, but it wasn't a full-time job. I was still, you know, a lecturer at the University of Zambia. I went back to my academic work, and while, you know, doing my academic work, I was critical of everybody. I was critical of the opposition. I was critical of the ruling party. I put up issues. I didn't criticize individuals, but I criticized ideas and tried to provide alternative ideas on how things. Of course, that did not make me popular, as you know, but it was very difficult to put me in a pigeonhole as to which position CPD was about. It is a non-partisan, but political, in the sense that is able to put on the table issues that are important to the development of our country, to the furtherance of democracy, to the furtherance of human rights, and of course good governance.
You mentioned something very critical, you know, that most political parties in this country have no ideologies, they have no sound policies. Part of the question is, what does this say about these political parties? The second part is, why are we, the market, still embracing people who have no ideologies, who have no ideas?
I think it's the nature of our politics. You see, we have politics that was centered around strong personalities. Kenneth Kaunda, you know, during the one-party state, it was Kaunda and nothing else. You know, politics started and ended with Kenneth Kaunda. UNIP was Kenneth Kaunda. So when Chiluba came on board, of course Chiluba was a product of mass endorsement. You know, he was found to be the most suitable person to challenge Kenneth Kaunda. and UNIP. But of course, people did not realize that Frederick Chiluba came from the unions, where he was a dominant figure for 17 years as Chairman General of the city. And there were also authoritarian structures. I was privileged to work with him when I was in government. Actually, I wanted to work for Minister of Labor. So I knew him very well, and I was not convinced that he would offer the kind of leadership that they needed. So in 1991, I was among the very few people, and of course, who completely departed from the grain, because I didn't believe in 1991 that Chiluba was the best person for this country. But there's not any other alternative at the time. So while we did voice the fact that Chiluba was not well suited for the position, that he had a lot of baggage, we were not able to put across an alternative person from him. As it turned out, of course, we were proved right. So that is the kind of thing that we were doing, some of us, that would raise issues even where we're in a minority. Because in the end, we were vindicated. But as you are saying, the question you asked, that why we continue to support not visionless, but parties that don't have ideologies. I think the reason is that is where we're coming from. That's our background. A political party is packaged and marketed by the leader, the way Microsoft came to the scene. Microsoft was a phenomenon because people did not really, have any interest in what PF was, but they knew who SATA was. So SATA was PF, and whatever the attachment to PF had to do with the fact that it was led by Microsoft. They thought this kind of person is the person we want, not what the party stood for. Because there are so many things, interesting things that the PF actually articulated, especially under the Secretary General, when you interviewed about Secretary General, they talked about the socialist and everything. But all those things were completely under the drain, because when there was a change of party or leadership in 2015, and the Kawimba was ushered aside with Guy Scott and others, that socialist orientation of PF disappeared. What came after that was simply a desire to accumulate, a desire to be rich, and so forth. I won't use the word looting because I don't have evidence, but impunity setting. I don't think that is what Microsoft would have wanted for PF. Microsoft came from a nationalist background, and he was really committed to leaving a stamp on Zambia's political scene in a short time that he was there.
Is this why political parties in this country die very quickly? Because they identify with an individual, unlike in South Africa, for example, where ANC, I think, is one of the oldest political parties in Africa. I think over 100 years now. I think is that what the reason?
Is that the reason? That's the reason. You see right now, if you are following the politics of South Africa, now they are going towards the elective convention this year, and ministers within the government appointed by Cyril Ramaphosa are criticizing him. They are saying that they are saying things and they are refusing to apologize. So you can see,
for example.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So you find that when you allow internal democracy, when you allow internal debate, you enrich the party and you depersonalize the party. You see, because then people don't look at the party in the prism of the leader, but the party has a tradition, and the African National Congress of South Africa has a tradition of internal debate. So you don't in any way suffer reprisals or recrimination for saying things are wrong. You don't. In our setup, you must show complete loyalty to the leader. And the moment you show or you are suspected of not being loyal to the leader, then you are shunted out. You are expelled. You are demoted. If you are in government, you are fired and so forth. You are humiliated. And this is what happens. That we have been unable, and I'm really surprised that the Patriotic Front right now is talking about having an elective conference next year, this year, in June. But they couldn't have one last year. They could have elective conference last year.
Absolutely.
Because that was very useful. If they allowed all those who were interested to stand, and of course the incumbent may have won, but the thing is that it would have energized them, because then they would have, people would come up with different ideas, and ideas get stifled when you don't allow debate. Now, because of that, parties become identified with leaders, and when leaders depart, the party dies. What happened to MMD? MMD is technically dead. With due respect to Nevas Mumba, the fact is the vision of MMD is gone. Because the one who carried the vision out there, they are gone. The likes of Derek Chitala, Mbita Chitala, my brother, Akamisha Wanika, and others, were supposed to be in MMD up to now. Because then they've carried that vision forward.
Absolutely.
Even if they would not have been in leadership, they would have been in positions of influencing things. But in the end, they just became passengers who had to scramble for this and that and so forth. So in my view, see, and this also speaks to my decision to retire. That CPD should not be tied to Neo SIMUTANYI. CPD should be able to survive me.
Absolutely.
And continue even without me.
Let me ask you a similar question that I asked earlier in terms of the quality of political parties. When it comes to electing the president, I think we've got it wrong most of the time, except maybe 2, 3 times. Personally, I believe Mazoka, for example, was elected, but we didn't. I think even the current president could have been elected earlier. My question is, I think it's similar to what you've dealt with before, but I want clarity in here. Why do we still get it wrong?
By that you mean, why is it that the system doesn't work?
We end up really, I'm sorry to use the word, we end up electing president who in the end
of course. Again, I think Hicks Kazwa, in his book, I think he talks about that. The fact that we have always gone for mediocrity. We have not elected the right people and so forth. I think it has to do with what I call party recruitment, the candidate recruitment. We don't have a system that ensures that the selection of candidates is democratic enough that we are able to vet leaders who cannot actually, who are not suitable to govern the country. The system tends to be either very corrupt or captured by a clique of people who impose candidates on the citizens. Because the way Edgar Lungu came about, he was the least qualified among the people who wanted to stand to become president of Zambia at the time. Maybe later on, but at the time, the one who came forward, I think a number were more qualified than he was, both in terms of experience and just in terms of leadership. And because the system within the PF for selecting was such a way that it was, I don't want to use the word rigged, but it was captured by a small group of people that are called gatekeepers, people who ensured that only that person should be the one to lead. In the end, it led to what we have. But also there is a system of self-selection, where the party leader select themselves to be the presidential candidates. So really, most of these parties, even most of those that contested the 2021 election, presidential elections, we went to a convention. don't have a membership to start with. So they sponsor themselves to be presidential candidates.
Yeah.
So that is the system which then produces mediocrity. Because if we go back to 2001, 2001, when we had the alternative leaders, 2001 Zambian electorate felt those on offer could make good leaders. Then we split the vote big time, that we are not able to get the right person.
Absolutely.
That's why MMD got 29%, UPN 27%, and so forth. But the thing is that increasingly, as we came to 2015, 2016, and 2021, Zambians have realized that they don't need to waste their votes. They should look at people who can make a maximum between those available, who is nearest to a person who can make a good leader.
Absolutely. I'll be getting to how CPD during your time was influencing governance. But since we've been talking about leadership and the quality, let me flip the coin. Kaunda did very well, and intellectually it didn't achieve much. Why is it that somebody who was not intellectually the base, for lack of a better way of putting it, performed better than some leaders who came much, much later with strong academic background? Is it the system again that you have been talking about?
No, I think the group of Kaunda and his team were nationalists.
Right.
They were visionaries. They had a cause. They fought for a cause. Independence, nationalism, the right to govern ourselves, the right to restore dignity to a people that were dehumanized. So for them, for Kaunda and his group, even with a little education, they had a value that realizing the dignity of the Zambian people, attaining freedom, political freedom, was for them a goal. And they did everything to achieve that. Of course, the complexities of development later affected their realization of those goals. But the thing is that these were people who didn't think about themselves. They thought about the nation, about us, about others. Our current crop of leaders, I'm not concerned about you and me. They are concerned about themselves.
Why did they lose it? Why did they lose it? I look at Kaunda as a father. The children should learn from the father. Why are these people who followed later did not behave like children in their house who should have learned from Kaunda? Why?
I think that the reason is that we went through what I would call popularization. We got them paupers. The impoverishment that Zambian suffered, Zambians, especially people who are educated, the middle class people, so you come from there, you know the background, that your salary couldn't meet your daily needs and so forth. So what happens that what we went through made people begin to think more about themselves, not about the nation. But I have worked for 30 years and I don't have a car. I've worked for this period of time. People retired and went to a village with nothing those days. So that meant that people now, because what Chiluba did with MMD was after liberalization. Of course, liberalization meant people lost their jobs, but also it created opportunities that weren't there before. And most of these opportunities were those where people could buy a house, could build a house, could buy a small car, and so forth. But thinking about the future became paramount. Because you can imagine the current crop of leaders who have just left office. within the first 5 years, in fact less than 5 years of being in office, they accumulated so much wealth, which they couldn't make many years before that. But because the nature of our politics now is such that there is no assurance and security that you will keep that job for the rest of your life, or that there will be a pension scheme or a pension that will look after you. So because of that, there is now, and I think this came with Chiluba, you know, may he rest in peace, that it was that crop of leaders that was actually, it was dominated by educated people. Some of whom were my colleagues at UNZA. That group of people, they had a pact. Look, those unique people are living a left office with nothing. They are poor. They were walking the streets. People sold their cars to be able to build houses or to buy houses, but they didn't have houses. I know some of them personally. You know, so because of that background, the new leadership then, that especially from the NMD leadership, were in a hurry to ensure that they have economic security. And to get security, you have to use shortcuts. And shortcuts involve corruption, you see. So this is the difference. Now, I know that within the crop of people who offer themselves for office, are people who are genuine, that they really want to save this country. But the political culture that has developed in this country, from us the citizens, is that we don't want a pauper, a poor person, leading the poor people's party, whatever it is, to come forward and say, I want to stand for presidency. Because we don't think that they can actually think about everybody else. They'll think about themselves. Of course, we miss it. Because somehow, we need to put in place a system where the kind of values parties put forward are such that they can sell them, market them, and are the basis on which we elect them to office. Right. But we won't do that because these values or these ideologies are not clearly articulated. They are not distinct from each other. And what we focus on is who is it who is saying this? Who is it? We know HH, we know he's wealthy and everything. We know where it comes from. He's a successful man. So we are using that. But HH stood for 5 times. Right. Then they didn't want leadership. 5 times. They still didn't believe that he's the right person. Until they went through some difficulty with this. Oh no, I think things are getting very bad. Let's now change. Right. Fast forward, Dr. SIMUTANYI, from what you have said, this selfishness, would I be right then to say you were not surprised when President Lungu said, I wasn't surprised. You were surprised? I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised because, you see, we've had impunity before. But I think the nature of impunity under the Lungu-led government was phenomenal. It was at a level and at a degree where there was no fear of the law, no fear of the police, no fear of recriminations. It was also reached a stage where they captured state institutions, institutions like the judiciary also were captured. So the fact that you have a complaint against the state, it doesn't mean that you will succeed in prosecuting it. Because the judicial system did not work on behalf of everybody. What I'm saying is that it's not academic, it's true. This is what happened. So reach a stage where people live in fear. You see, cadres were in charge, and the president himself, President Lungu, said, if the police cannot deal with this kind of thing, we'll deal with ourselves. Ourselves meaning cadres. Cadres, the militia. If the political militia will deal with people because the police has failed to deal with it.
Right. Let me delve into arrogance again. I'll definitely go back to Center for Police dialogue. You allude to the fact that PF was very arrogant. Tell me, why do I get a feeling, and people are getting this feeling, that even though they committed a lot of crimes and told misdeeds, they still seem to be very arrogant? They're easily taking on the government of the day. They're taking on investigative agencies. They're calling police bluff. Was this arrogance so deep-rooted that even in the aftermath, they still think they're still in power, or they can influence their fate?
Yes. I think there is an explanation. The explanation is that the PF captured state institutions, captured them, and controlled them, which meant that they got paralyzed. They could not perform the functions for which they were established. And these structures have not been transformed. The organizational remained the same. A few people have been changed, but the personnel is intact.
Right.
So these personnel are the ones that were saving the PF. And it's still there. I've even heard people say that people in government, in PF, say, no, we're still in charge. We know what's going on. No, we're still pulling the string. What our expectation was that there would be a transformation. That the new leadership of UPND, the new dawn, would sweep clean the system. They would replace everybody and start afresh and establish new rules and everything. That's what we expected. But that didn't happen. But this arrogance of the PF is also predicated on the inexperience of the new government.
Right.
That you see, the UPND is still behaving as if it is in opposition. It is still very careful and cautious, and so forth. So it's not decisive in making decisions. And they're taking advantage of that. But 5-6 months now in office, we should be seeing them actually put a stamp.
That you're in total charge.
That they're in charge. It doesn't look like they're completely in charge yet. And that's the reason. But again, you see, the PF were in government for 10 years. But there are 2 administrations. The first one was only for 3 years. Then a longer one for 7 years. Much more damage took place in the last 7 years. So to undo this damage overnight would take time. But I think at the top, where President Hichilema is where we expect leadership. But if indeed, because he keeps on singing the song that there's corruption, there's a clique and so forth, the president should be the last person to complain about corruption.
Absolutely.
He should be in charge.
He's got the power.
The other day he was saying he wants the police to go to the root of the issue of the lady who was beaten in Kasama. That's leadership. That's the leadership we want him to show on the so-called clique. Because he has the data, he has the information from the intelligence. So he doesn't need to complain about it. He just needs to get the agencies to bring these people to book. That's all. People will applaud him when he does the right thing.
Absolutely.
He shouldn't complain like ordinary citizen like us. No. Him should go to root. But he appoints the leaders of these institutions. And ensure that they get funded. He has said, no, I will make sure that they are independent. They can't be independent. But they report to him. So how can they be independent? They report to him. That's what they want to say.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Let's go back, to our Center for Policy and Dialogue. During your 14 years, what strategies did you put in place to influence, governance? And among the governments, the president you said, which government, which president stands out that you added value to the government, to the president, and they listened to you and you felt, I think my work is being appreciated. The work of the Center for Policy Dialogue is being appreciated.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
It's a hard one because the nature of work we do, what we've done, is of different types. There is the one to do with bringing different parties together to dialogue. That one I think was appreciated by everybody.
Yeah.
Where would organize workshops and bring different parties together, identify problem areas, and then come with the recommendations for action. Then, of course, we did conduct opinion polls, as you are aware of opinion polls. That did not go very well with both government and opposition, because public opinion polls tend to show perceptions that particular parties are not strong and that they are not very welcome in the political space. In fact, President Mwanawasa even talked about banning opinion polls.
I remember I was at the press conference.
Yes, altogether, you know. So we that was one of the issues, but also there were things. You see, the kind of work we did or we do is sometimes simply placing issues on the agenda. We raise an issue and it's picked up. Some of the things would actually be acted upon by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, but mostly it was public commentary. Public commentary, you know, and public commentary, which is critical, is not often well received because of a culture where criticism is not tolerated. But we think that working with other civil society organizations, especially on monitoring elections, on pointing out where things are wrong and so forth, we think we added value. We think this last election we played some role in ensuring that the rigging was minimized or not happen at all, bringing stakeholders together to actually devise ways of ensuring that that would not happen. We think that now I have been around for a long time personally myself, and I did not know President Mwanawasa personally, but I was able to go to State House with some groups of other people I worked with to advise him. And I think he was one of the most receptive of all the presidents that I've actually interacted with. Because Lev Mwanawasa actually valued advice and acted on advice. He was a man who wanted to show that you know, people should remember him. He is making a contribution and that is working in public interest. He was very sensitive to criticism, but at the same time, he listened to advice. I think after him, I have not seen a leader who has been receptive to advice the way he was. And you know, I did not interact with Michael Sata, but I know that he used to. You know, he was a man who once called me. You know, Michael Sata called me one time and said, "Oh, yeah, you know what you are doing is very good." Just before he became president, he said, "Look, we value your opinion polls. We think they're very useful, and don't get discouraged because we work on them. When we see how the things are, we actually address those areas where we are weak and everything. So don't get discouraged by my opposition, by the criticism from my colleagues." I got a scathing attack from Guy Scott at one time. But Microsoft called me personally, you know, and I was humbled that he could actually call me. In government, he was different. In government, it was different because he was very confrontational. Some of the work we are doing where, you know, our funders were intimidated by him. and it created some a climate of fear, you know, in the partners, you know, to deal with CPD, because you know the president himself picked the phone, talked to the ambassador, talked to the organization that was funding us, and intimidated them that, you know, you are destabilizing my country or blah 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 blah. But you know, he didn't talk to me, but that's what he did. So when the president is personally involved in talking to your partners, how can they fund you? Yeah. You know, because when they share their experience with other partners, look, you know, those guys are a problem. If you fund them, this is what will happen to you. After him, of course, my brother Edgar Lungu. Yeah, I never interacted with him, but I know him very well. You know, because we had to invest at the same time. So, but I never interacted with him. Right.
Lawyers, well, most lawyers are synonymous for maintaining the law. You know, synonymous for good, you know, governance. How did this lawyer president, throw out good governance out of the window? That's part of the question. The second part of the question is, in your work, whilst you're doing this work, did you feel my work is futile as far as this kind of leadership, as far as this kind of governance is concerned?
Let me address the first question.
Yeah.
You know, personally, I'm a political scientist.
Yeah.
And I have very strong views about lawyers and others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to use this forum to talk about that.
Right.
My brother, Edgar Lungu, came to the position of president really as an accident. I've written about this, you know, published. You know, he was ill-prepared for the role. As you know, in 2011, he was appointed deputy minister. And from deputy minister, he became a minister and so forth. There were people who had been ministers before him, in longer period. Yeah. But other than that, I think he was brought to the position by I don't know the right way to use, a small group of people within the PF. Yeah. So he was captured from the very beginning. And they had to act in their interest. Right. Now, that is my view. Maybe I'm not right, but that is how I evaluated his leadership throughout the 7 years he was in office. So he may personally, himself as an individual, have been genuine. But it was difficult for him to get out of a cocoon of being a captured person. Right. So I would like to believe that his statements in 2015 when he was campaigning, that, you know, I would only save the remainder of my sort of step, may have been genuine. But people around him said, no, you can't save only for the 18 months. We need to go for it. And there was a change of tone. Again, he was encouraged to stand for a steady time. And many of us felt, look, he doesn't need to stand for a steady time. Because he was elected on the first, in the first time he was elected, it was a full term. That is how it was defined in the Constitution at the time. Again, it may not have been him. It were the people around him. Because without him, they can't access the same resources. Yeah. They needed him in office so that they can be able to access state facilities and, of course, to be able to amass wealth. So he was an important cog in this, in this whole calculus, that they needed him to be able to facilitate the things. We saw what happened in 2015, that those who were appointed by Microsoft lost out. Yeah. He bought his own people. Absolutely. Yeah. Same party, by different actors. The same thing happened in 2018. When the Rupiah Banda came in, he also removed some people. Yeah. You see? Of course, Rupiah Banda can maintain most of them. But for Edgar, he removed a lot of them.
Insecurity?
Yeah. Yes, but the thing is that once, but that's power, you see.
Building your own power base.
Yes, own power base. So once you're at the power base, then there is insatiable appetite for power itself to stay in office. And the fear of what happens if he lost office, if he left office, becomes the driving force. So that has nothing to do with being a lawyer, or that has nothing to do with that. That has to do with the nature of man, what the calendar used to call the animal in man.
Yeah, the animal in man. Yeah.
The fact that once in power, people want to keep power. Because the statement he made on the eve of our election in August last year was so strange. I found that he, the statesman who has served the country for 7 years,
yeah,
and is facing an election the following day,
yeah,
and he says, you know, I'll win by such a large margin, and then I hand over power
to myself.
Why say that?
Wow.
It shows a lack of respect for voters, because you must ask them to vote for you. You must tell them if you lost, you accept the result. Yeah. And you didn't do that. So you could see that he had reached a point where power had completely taken control of him, that he couldn't see and reason better. I know that the speech they wrote for him maybe didn't say that.
Yeah.
But those things he said them on his own, because now he realized that, oh yeah, no, now I don't care. He even threatened to arrest HH.
Yeah.
Next week I'm going to arrest him, as soon as I'm confirmed. All those things, why do that?
Yeah.
You see, that tells you about what power does. Power destroys people completely. Good people become bad. Because some of these people, some of these people were our friends. They can't even pick a phone, they can't even answer your call. They become unavailable the moment they're in State House, until they leave State House. But they all leave State House. I used to say that whatever happens, this man will one day be out of it.
Absolutely. We'll be taking a break very shortly and talk about the 12th of August. But before we do that, you did allude to the fact that you did participate in managing the elections. There's always the issue of rigging. In your work, you want a free and fair election. But with that constant issue of rigging, again, does that worry what you're trying to achieve, knowing the government in power is very difficult to remove, and especially if it's unpopular, it will resort to illegal means like rigging?
Yeah. You see, the rigging issue has been proved wrong on 2 occasions. I don't know whether it's 2 occasions, maybe it's been 3 occasions. In 2001, the MMD performed very badly. There was rigging, but you could see that the possibility or potential for a ruling party to lose power was there. In 2011, MMD lost power. Even with rigging, there could have been a bit of rigging. And in 2021, PF lost power. Yeah. So it's possible that it's possible for opposition to actually win. What really is important, in my view, is to ensure that systems are put in place. I've heard proposals for electronic voting and things like that. Systems are put in place that makes it difficult for structures like ECZ, the police, and others to be compromised.
Yeah.
Because what has happened in the past, and I think even in the last election, is that these structures that are supposed to manage our elections are themselves compromised. So when they are compromised, the intelligence, the police, the electoral commission is not Lusaka-based people who manage the election. They are individuals from the communities, teachers, just ordinary people are the ones who are interested with the management of elections. So it's very easy to corrupt them. You see, People have been found with ballot boxes in their homes and so forth. This thing the reports on what happened in 2016 are horrifying. Horrifying. That was an election which was actually stolen. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
But you have a judicial system where when you are aggrieved, you go to a court, and this court, because it's captured, will not decide the matter at all. And it ends there. You see, the Constitutional Court did not actually decide whether or not the election was rigged. They simply said they won't decide because time was run out. You see? So again, we have to go back to the drawing board. Those are an opportunity for this government which has just left to sort out those problems. But instead, it inserted into that Bill 10 things that were not supposed to be there.
Yeah. And
in the end, everything else was rejected. There were some good things, like the period that for deciding on presidential petitions. 30 days was good.
Yeah.
But it was thrown out because the package, they wanted everything to approve together. So it couldn't work.
Yeah.
And they were adamant and arrogant that there would be no negotiation on what can be approved. Everything should go as a package.
Yeah.
So it's thrown out.
Yeah.
So again, you see that when you have a government that is bent on winning at all costs, rigging becomes important.
Absolutely.
But this last election, I'll talk about that. This last election, people were aware that 2016 was rigged.
Yeah.
And they woke up very early in the morning and said, one reason why it was possible was that not enough people voted.
Absolutely. This is Frank On Camnet, my guest, outgoing, executive director of Center for Policy Dialogue, my good friend, Dr. SIMUTANYI. When we come back, we quickly reflect on the 12th of August, 2021. Join us very shortly.
From 31st January to 6 February 2022, Zambia's spiritual atmosphere will take a paradigm shift. The Bible says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord."
Zambia, a nation under God conference
will be starting at 20:45 hours
to 22:30 hours.
Live on Camnet TV channel 274 on DSTV, GoTV channel 98 and Topstar channel 106.
Speakers will be
Bishop Stanley Simunyola, Grace Ministries;
Dr. Nevas Mumba, Victory Ministries;
Apostle Michael Mutemwa from South Africa;
Bishop Nelly Chikwanda, New Life Christian Center;
Apostle Rick Kamwanga, Risen Life Church International;
Bishop Joy Makando, Bread of Life;
Bishop Alex Mwami of Holy Ghost Firehouse from South Africa; and your hosts, Pastors Victoria and Moses Chilua.
Camnet Television,
not just another channel. Camnet TV is becoming big and better. You can now watch Camnet TV wherever you are around the world, simply by downloading the Camnet TV app. With Camnet TV app, you only use less bundles. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
This is Camnet International, and this is Frank on Camnet. We come back to the last half of our interview, and if you've got any calls, please, this is the time to call us. And if you've got those messages, please, start texting them now. We're talking about, governance issues with my guest, Dr. SIMUTANYI, outgoing executive director for the Center for Policy Dialogue. Fast forward, 12th of August, 2021. Did you expect what happened?
No.
Really?
From my own work, from my own polling and so forth, I thought it was very clear that UPN will win.
Okay.
But from practice, based on experience, I thought we have a similar result as the one that we had in 2016.
Right.
I was aware that the PF had put in place an elaborate plan to rig the election.
Yeah.
They had pre-marked ballot papers. They introduced voting machines to slow down the voting. As you know, most of those biometric machines broke down.
Yeah.
They overheated. There were no fumes. There were no, ink. There was no ink.
Yeah.
There are so many things that
Yeah.
went wrong on voting day. But the volume of people that turned up was frightening. Because it was not possible to stop them from voting,
Right.
even once they were in the queue.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. But the second thing was that I think the structures that have normally been compromised were not willing this time around to be used in the same way.
I'll be getting back to you to complete that. I'm told there is a caller. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Your name, please?
Hello?
We can hear you. What is your name?
Yeah, this is Peter Nyango from Peru.
Yes, Peter. Go ahead.
Peter Nyango from Peru.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to wait. Yes, I wanted to say something. Okay. I was positioned on like I don't think that the president appointed, but we've been having that the president is the man to appoint everyone in the government. And we all know that if there was at least a law which ensures other people to do you are going down here and you are not laying about you are going down. See the people that are position. I
I did get the gist of the question. I don't know whether you did. I think it's basically, questioning the powers of the president and he appoints so many people. You can take that on board, but finish what you were saying about whether you were surprised or not.
Oh, yes.
What is happening? Yeah,
Oh,
the
yes.
landslide eventually.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so I was saying that the police were brutalized under the PF government. They had a grievance. And it was not possible to use them to rig, because really, if anything, they were interested in change also.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think many people, especially civil society, played a very big role in ensuring that this time around there was integrity in the election. That itself does not take away the fact that it came as a surprise. What also came as a surprise was the margin of victory.
Very high.
Because you're talking almost 60%.
Yeah.
You see, it was very high. People thought there would be, yes, a marginal win, and then perhaps
even a runoff.
To go to runoff.
Yeah.
In fact, this is what I was hearing from the PF circles, that to go to runoff and everything, that they had done their homework, they had enough votes here and there, but it didn't work out. Why? Because people voted differently, and they voted differently in traditional PF strongholds. Eastern Province, AG got 49%. It has never happened before.
Yeah.
I think in northern, more than 25%.
Yeah.
Luapula, everywhere where he had performed poorly before, he this time did better. In Copper Belt Province, he won in all the constituencies. Even where PF won the parliamentary, the HH won the presidential. So it was really a referendum on Eddie Kalungu than anything else. Right. Eddie Kalungu and PF.
Tell me, Center for Policy Dialogue espouses dialogue.
Yes.
PF, used, violence. Yeah. But even violence did not work.
Yes. Yes.
It did not.
It didn't work. And you see, what happened that voters did not speak.
Yeah.
The voters who had been brutalized, who were fearful of cadres and everything, simply said, leave it to us, we'll speak in the ballot box.
Right.
That's where they went to register what they didn't like about PF.
Your polls that you pre-polls that you did pointed to UPND victory, albeit the numbers. How did your colleagues at UNZA, some of them were pollsters, get it so wrong?
No, but I think they got it wrong because they didn't do any polling.
Yeah.
I can tell you that if there was a serious polling done, the margin may have been different, but the winner would have been known.
Right.
By whichever polling agency was My colleagues at UNZA were simply paid money to fabricate information that shows that PF is going to win. And you see, it looks as if they switched the whole thing because the rating for HH appeared to have been switched and given to Eddie Kalungu.
Yeah.
It went against the grain.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for my colleagues, it tarnishes their academic credentials.
Yeah.
Because you see, you can get it wrong, but the margin should be very small.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very small.
Yeah.
Now they claimed to have to have interviewed so many people.
Yeah.
Don't even do that in polling.
Yeah.
It's certainly very expensive.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary.
Absolutely.
You see? So what you do in polling is that you actually randomize. You do random sampling. And when you select the sample well enough, the way the CSO does it, the results should be close to reality.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that with me, I remember making a comment on that. I think they did in two phases. First of all, they covered 5 provinces, then another 5 provinces. Don't even do it like that.
Absolutely.
Normally, you cover the whole country at once.
Yeah.
You see, and they must have had sponsors who had a lot of money, so they couldn't have failed to do it at once.
Cover at the same time.
You see, but then they thought that after the first results, there was an outcry that actually this can't be correct because the number is small and everything. Then they said they did the second one. Which was they said. So in the end, these are people who cannot work with their heads high.
Absolutely. Let's see, do we have any messages? Viewers, if you'd like to call, please, call the last caller's line was not very, very good. Do we have any?
But I can comment on that one.
Any text? Please give me the text. If you have, talk about the powers of the president that the caller raised.
Yes, I think we have talked about this, and the CPD has been one of the advocates of reducing the powers of the president.
Yeah.
The powers of appointment of the president are so vast, and that the president is not supposed to appoint everybody. Because of this power the president has, we don't hold the president accountable. Yeah. We are afraid of the president. Yeah. So it reaches a stage where loyalty becomes really the yardstick for performance. These people, they owe their jobs to the appointing authority. They are positions that don't need to come from the president. The positions of permanent secretary, for example, those can be appointed. They can be made by the Civil Service Commission. Yeah. You see, the Civil Service Commission is supposed to play a role, and you can get career civil servants to appoint those positions. There are many other positions in government where the president is supposed to play a role. But we see that the president appoints the coordinator for the DMMU, yes, ambassadors. Yeah, those are representatives of the president, representatives of the country. But they are positions that either need ratification by parliament, including the ministers. You know, the ministers we have, they should be cleared by parliament. You know, we need a system where presidential powers are not complete, they're not absolute. That he proposes names the way he does for Chief Justice and other people, and then they go through grilling by National Assembly. Right. You know, of course, you need you know, independent people within Parliament, because what we have seen is that you know, the National Assembly is also just a rubber stamp. In that most decisions of the president are never challenged.
Right. I'll revisit some of the issues related to the present you know, administration, but before we get you know, to that, Dr. SIMUTANYI, what key lessons, one huge lesson, should the stakeholders who are involved in the 2021 elections, especially the politicians, pick up from what happened on the 12th of August?
I think firstly, Zambians cannot be taken for a ride. They cannot be taken for granted. We have always assumed that politicians own citizens. You know, this prediction that I'm going to win and things like that shows lack of understanding that voters are the ultimate masters. They are the ones to decide who should govern them. And this time around it was demonstrated clearly that not even the president owns the electorate. They are the masters. That's number one. Secondly, I think one other lesson which came out of the 2021 elections was that this, irrespective of restrictions placed on opposition figures, opposition parties and so forth to address meetings and so forth, when people have made up their minds, they can be stopped from voting for people, for candidates of their choice. HH did not campaign throughout the country. He didn't have time to do that, but he didn't have the opportunity to do that. Because he was restricted, but he won. In the provinces where he didn't even campaign. So that's a lesson, that the abuse of the police and security forces, that is not a deterrent to stopping the electorate from exercising their right to vote for people or candidates of their choice. And I think lastly, a coordinated collaboration of civil society organizations to stop, detect rigging can enhance electoral integrity. CPD organized 2 workshops last year. One was before the elections, to really look at how can we promote electoral integrity in this election. What are the likely scenarios that may lead to a stolen election? We learned from 2016. And that, through that, people went out with the support of partners to put in place a monitoring mechanism where it was possible to place monitors in every polling station across the country.
Absolutely.
And we understand that even UPND, this time around, was able to put at least 2 monitors in each polling station.
1 or 2 questions before we wind up, unless there are some messages. As a man who has been at the helm of an organization, you know, that promotes good governance, what are your expectations from this administration, from this president, how he can achieve good governance?
My expectations are many. There are many because President HH has been on the block, on the political front, for a long time. He was longer in opposition than even Michael Sata.
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah.
But of course, age was on his side, so it was possible to wait. I think he has learned a lot by being in opposition to make things different. And my expectation is that he will not behave as though he's in opposition, that he will actually be decisive and offer leadership to his country. I think it's not enough to simply assure us through his posts, which is not a bad idea, but I think we need action. You know, we want to see action on corruption. We want to see action on the economy. Want to see action on unemployment, because those are the areas where there can be an explosion. The president talked about empowering the youth. He has zero tolerance for cadreism. Good. But there should be an alternative to cadreism. So those young people who no longer can make a living from cadreism, of course, not everyone can be in cadre.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why PF suffered defeat, because cadres were simply a small fraction of the youth. And they are the ones who got the lion's share of so-called empowerment funds. So we want to see a different way of doing things. We want to applaud the Union government at the end of 1 year on how the CDF funds have been used. Want to see that there are many more beneficiaries, and of course that the empowerment funds, especially CDF funds, will have an impact on the development of the constituencies. And I think it's a good idea that the money is going to the constituencies, because there are more constituencies than there are districts. So it will mean that it will be possible to have more money if you have 2 or 3 constituencies in one place, like in Lusaka, you have 7. So all that money will be spent in Lusaka. So there will be more beneficiaries. But I would also say that corruption is not only PF. It's not a PF thing. Corruption is corruption.
Yeah.
And in our country, it is endemic. So it is important that systems are put in place to ensure that even the current leadership are not tempted to dip their hands in the state coffers. That they are transparent in the use of public resources and are accountable,
Right.
to Zambian people. Because you see, when the president says, you know, he's a national salesman for Zambia and so forth, we like that. But he is also the chief administrator, the chief executive officer, the CEO of Zambia Incorporated. So the buck stops with him.
Yeah.
And I know that he has the energy, the drive. He has spent time thinking about how he would do if he came to power. And he simply needs support. So we will support him if he does the right thing. But for us, where I stand and where CPD is, we will actually voice out when you are not happy.
Yeah.
We will not spare New Dawn government simply because we helped them come to power. We will not do that.
Right.
We will criticize them. We will tell them here things are wrong, but they are our friends, they are our brothers. So we'll find a good way of advising them so that they don't repeat the mistakes of their predecessors.
1 or 2 questions very quickly, Dr. SIMUTANYI. Is the Constitution yet again a priority? It's been tampered with so many times.
The Constitution, in fact, that's the starting point.
Yeah.
6 months down the line, you remember John Sangwa suggested that they should work on the constitution within 6 months. Once we go to 2 years, it won't be done.
Yeah, it won't be a priority anymore.
Because there are areas that need immediate, immediate attention. Like, for example, the Act. If I was in a position to influence decisions, I think probably the Act should have been repealed completely. We don't need it. You see, so there are certain things that this President Hichilema, was a victim of the Public Order Act. But he's almost 6 months in office and they've done nothing about it.
Yeah.
And I heard from the new Minister of Justice saying that they just need to reform it a bit. No, we don't need it. It was not designed for a democratic society. It was designed to the colonial piece of legislation that was meant to control and police natives. Us were natives and we didn't have rights. But now that we have rights, we are still policed in the same way like old masters. So it should go. Let's find something else, but not.
All right.
But there is no discussion around it.
Yeah.
It's a problem. There's no discussion around it.
Right.
And the problem is that the PF who retained it cannot speak on it. But those who have come, who have replaced them, the new Dawn government, they find it useful now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see? And that's very regrettable.
One or two questions again before we wind up. During the inauguration, President Hichilema said it's not about the transfer of power to him. It's basically transfer of leadership because the power belongs to the people. And indeed, the people exercise their power on the 12th of August. Now they put a government in place. How do they still participate in the governance? How do they use that power, the people, to participate in the governance?
Sort of decentralization. And President Hichilema talked about decentralization. I have not heard him explain how the new Dawn or the UPND policy on decentralization differs with the PF government. They use the term decentralization, even open the decentralization conference. What we need to see is the transfer of decision-making power to the districts.
Right.
And this transfer should also be accompanied with the transfer of financial resources, which is part of the CDF thing.
Yeah.
And through that, decisions can now be made by the people at the local level. We already have a template in what is called the Decentralization Implementation Plan. I've done some work on that. And this template talks about decentralizing 13 functions from the center to the rural, to the districts, where these ministries, which will be decentralized, will not exist, or the functions, those functions will not be there. Agriculture, education, health, tourism, lands, about 13. That if those things should be realized, that is how you involve people in making decisions. In 2010, when the Technical Committee on the Constitution, headed by former Chief Justice Ernest Lungwe, reported, they recommended the establishment of provincial assemblies. This proposal was shot down by the PF government. I think we should revisit that idea of provincial assemblies. Let's say provincial assemblies so that we localize power and make people in the provinces and the districts make the decision.
Brilliant. I love that.
What they have done now, for example, to take CDF money, to take CDF to the empowerment money to the constituencies, they could also get the whole budget of the province and give it to the province, the whole budget. And by doing that, you find that there will be much more development taking place. South Africa does that.
Yeah, great. Right. Do we have any messages before I close? All right. We wish PF Party not to come back in Zambia. It was the bunch of criminals, murderers, and tribalists which they almost divided the country. As from a guy called Kalavila. Anymore? Okay, we more or less, done. My two final questions, let me start with second from last 14 years at the helm. And very briefly, is there anything that you would have loved to have done differently?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I like what Inaka Sonde is doing, for example, the advocacy around justice legal advocacy.
Yes, the Chapter 1 Foundation.
Taking issues to court, challenging the state and so forth. We would have loved to also, challenge the public order act. I'm a strong advocate of its complete repeal, but we never had the space to do that. The environment did not allow any form of demonstration.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we would have liked to do, that we would I hope that CPD can do with other donors, with other partners, is simply to ensure that rights of citizens are institutionalized in a manner where it should not be, the issue of libel, so-called criminal libel or defamation of the president. I think that should go. And we would want to see a situation where you can kiss as a president, say anything about the president that is being arrested.
Right.
Those are things that I think now that we have a new dispensation and a president who appears amenable to the respect for rights and rule of law, I think this is the time to do those things. These are the things we would have loved to have done, but we had no opportunity to do them.
Right. In few words, I know you've touched on my last questions. What are your expectations, from the lady, who is taking over from you, Caroline Kawonde Katotogwe? What are your expectations?
Difficult. She worked with us, with the CPD for about 2 years.
Yeah.
I feel that she has the drive. She has the energy.
Yeah.
And personally, I have all the confidence that she will translate the vision of CPD into practice. And my expectation is that she will raise the bar.
Yeah.
And surpass where we reached. In the end, leadership is very important, and we have been able to keep fighting, to keep the institution there because of leadership. Because despite the tribulation that we went through, the attacks and everything, it was possible to give up,
Yeah.
I hope that she will not be discouraged. We will support her, we will encourage her, and she seems to be ready to actually fill the boots that I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I think she came to the right time when the atmosphere, the political atmosphere or temperature is good. So I think she will succeed. I am very confident that she will be able to prosecute her role effectively, because we will not be far from her. We will continue to give her encouragement.
Neil, thank you so much for everything that you've done in this important, assignment. Sometimes, the assignments that we have, you know, are very thankless.
Thank you.
But somebody has to do it, and you've traveled your race, you know, your journey, you know, very well. And by the way, thank you for the contribution to my own personal journey. I mean, I've interviewed you so many times, especially when I used to let the people talk. You know, I picked up the phone, advised you when I want to do a great job. You know, people, you know, when people see you on TV or hear you on the radio, they think, wow, this guy is very intelligent. This presenter, they forget that we also do research. We go to people, we come to people like you, you know, to ask for the vast knowledge, you know, that you have. God bless you.
I'm very humbled. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been Frank on Camnet, Camnet International. My guest has been Dr. Neo SIMUTANYI, served as Executive Director for Center for Policy and Dialogue. We really thank him, just like we thank my crew right here and the executive producer, Pastor Chiluba, and Mrs. Chiluba. Thank you for you, viewers, for watching this program. We'll definitely be back next Tuesday at 17 hours. And don't forget what I keep on saying, what I keep on telling you, all you Zambians, even those who are not, you know, Zambians, do your very best, and God will do the rest. That's it. It's as simple as that. Thank you for watching. Have a good week ahead of you, and good night from all of us.